make a good team.
Mhm.
Julie and I like to work together and make sure that we target what you need. So that's why we are here today.
Yeah, so we have a little poll for you to fill out.
Mhm.
Um, but maybe before then, we could just get like a thumbs up or, a wave or something. How many of you are brand new students to Concordia this fall? Okay, so I see quite a few. That's awesome. Well, so glad you made it here to.
Congratulations. Yeah,
I
that's
know.
awesome. Welcome.
I
Um,
just started summer.
okay.
Wonderful. That's
That's
great.
awesome, Kathy. Well, we're really excited to have this opportunity. Regina and I worked together last year to do some workshops together and had a lot of fun with that. And so we put our heads together this summer and wondered what would be the best one to start even the week before fall officially begins.
Yeah.
So this was what we came up with. So tonight we'll have in the promotion, I had originally said there'd be four 10-minute bite-sized tips. And then as I was developing the slideshow, I'm like, no, I can only think of three, and we're gonna do it in 45 minutes. So anyway, we'll get it all done. But let's begin with a quick poll. So let me start this. Okay. So this is just like questions about your confidence in using databases, in completing writing or research assignments, and in comprehension skills when you're reading and research articles. So if you could just take a moment to fill those three questions out, that would be great.
Should I be sharing? Does it show up that I'm not doing the poll?
I think you're good.
Okay.
I can see people filling it out. So,
Okay, good.
Are these the same questions you asked in the email
Kind
or
of.
or or when we were registering?
They're kind of like that. These three poll questions
Hmm.
are rating your confidence level on the content we're going to cover tonight. So, for Sarah's case, the first question is, when using a database, how confident are you in applying filters to find the articles you need to complete your research assignments? And then, Sarah, if you want to put it in the chat, not at all confident is a one, super
Hmm.
confident is a five. If you want to
Hmm.
put down those numbers in the chat, that'd be great. We can record it that way.
Okay.
And the second question, same rating scale. How confident are you in your approach and comprehension skills when reading research articles? And number three question is, when completing a writing research assignment, how confident are you in your ability to effectively add quotes or paraphrases? We're really curious to know.
okay, looks like just about everyone's had a chance to fill that out.
I don't think I can get to the chat until your poll is down, but I can tell you this, I'd probably mark myself as a two on all three of them.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you. Okay. Can you all see the results? Okay, so with question one, the there were the highest rating was 4, and that was the majority, but it was only 36%. Um, the second
Okay.
highest was 2, at 29%. So kind of got a mix here. Also have
Yeah.
ones at 21% and threes at 14.
Yeah. So when you're reading, that was the highest. So most people feel fairly confident in their reading.
Yeah, the number
Okay.
57% marked four for that one. So that was a fairly strong majority. And then the
Mhm.
last one, effectively adding quotes or paraphrases, the three is the majority at 57%.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. So we know what we're working with here. A little of everything.
good to know. All right, so well, Regina, would you like to go ahead? Oh, did you want to say something about being on a laptop if possible?
Well, we for these workshops, because we try to do some practicing, it is best if you're using a laptop or something where that's has a larger screen. So if you're not, that's fine. But in the future, you may want to remember in a workshop, we try to do work on our laptops. So, but if not, that's fine. We are going to record this if that's okay with everybody so that you can have this for future reference. And then any other attendees that register but were not able to attend will be able to share the recording with them.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to begin. What do you think?
I think so. You want to start a recording?
It is.
Oh,
It's
it's
going.
recording. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So, Julie, you want to take this slide and then I'll go from there.
Sure. So, like I said, we were trying to think about how to divide this up. And so Regina is going to talk about research strategies. And then I'll talk a little bit more specifically about integrating research into writing. And then we'll both refer to number three. So first we're gonna kind of go through the writing process in a way with this the order. So first, what would you do to research successfully? And then how would you, in a broad scale, how would you integrate that into your writing? And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of citing and referencing.
Okay. So, starting with research strategies, you've got to remember for university level research, you've got to remember to start in the right place. And in this case, instead of asking ChatGPT or going to the almighty Google, you are going to try to always start at Concordia's Schroeder Library, which is, you're going to bookmark this, cui.edu/library. That's your friend for advanced research. And then that has like everything that you're going to need to help you. You have services here available on that splash page. We do offer research consultations. So if you ever get stuck, you can just have even 15 minutes with us with where we share screens and talk about that. And then we also have at the top here this big discovery search box. I'm going to advise because we're going to be covering advanced research in this workshop to maybe kind of not use the discovery search box unless you have something specific, like the book that you need or an article that you want to make sure that we have, because this is like for beginning research type of deal. And then we have in the middle of that page resources, and that's where we're going to focus our attention. Um, the library resources, specifically, if you scroll down to those tabs. And by the way, to find more information, there are these little arrows that you need to click to see what other tiles exist. But down in the middle of that splash page, you're going to see library resources, research databases specifically. That's where you're going to start your advanced research. And I advise everybody to always try to start with EBSCO hosted databases because here on EBSCO, you're going to be able to apply filters in an advanced search format. It's forcing you to do that because I made it do so. Once you know how to apply filters, using the advanced search feature for in EBSCO, because you're searching multiple databases at once, you're going to be able to do the same on any database in the future. So I'm happy to show you how these like filters work right now. Noticing first this, you're going to try to use this subject pull down menu to the right of that search field. And if you know your subject, usually you do, you can do the subject search and put that into this first search box. And notice at the top of the page in EBSCO, it says all databases. You're searching multiple databases at once. You're not going to waste time on just one. You can search them all at once. Yay. The other things to always remember when you're searching on a database is to select full text. That's most databases are going to have a checkbox for you to do that. Select full text because then you're going to have all of the information in the whole full article available to you right here and now. If you don't check that full text box, you're only going to have the abstract or the summary, and you won't be able to read the full article, which I know in my case can be super frustrating because I found the perfect article and I want to read it right now. So avoid that frustration, and you can just select that full text box to start your research. Also, notice within the EBSCO platform, they have peer reviewed. You can save yourself a lot of time and headache by always making sure that it is peer reviewed, and you can select that right then and there. Adding the filters is going to shrink the number of results that you have. So in this diagram here, we have full text. We only did full text as a checkbox, and we entered in a search term. And I don't remember what the search term was I used, so forgive me for that. But anyway, 91,240 articles popped up. That's a lot of reading, right? So if I checked peer reviewed and full text, I narrowed it down to 21,383. If I selected full text and peer reviewed, down to 20,756. Full text and peer reviewed and the subject, down to 122 articles to read. That's a lot better. And finally, if I select all of the ones, including articles written within the past 12 months, then I only have a few articles to read to plow through. So the filters in any database are really going to help you pull what you need faster. So you don't have to, you don't have to explode. Your head doesn't have to explode with all the content. So adding filters shrinks your results. I'm going to show you really quick in live time what the searching looks like, so you can see exactly how I'm going to do this. And if you've done this on your own, sorry, we're going to do it again because the website changed as of like last week. So here we are with this discovery search box, and I want to just put in, of course, frogs and tell you, you'll know that you're in the wrong place because you're going to see this Smarty Marty. The Smarty Marty, he's an eagle reading a book with glasses. He's very cute. He's our little logo for the library. If you see that logo, you're in the wrong spot. So we're not going to do our research here. We're going to scroll down to library resources and select research databases. That's where we're going to start our research, ignoring again the discovery search box, and select EBSCO hosted databases. And because I was visiting with the nurses today, I'm going to select my pull down menu here, subject, and I'm going to start typing Parkinson's disease. Now notice what happens here. This long search appears. Did you mean Parkinson's disease or Parkinson's disease or Parkinson's disease or PD or, and I'm going to select that because it's going to give me everything that's going to apply to that those different search terms. And then down here at the bottom, I'm going to select full text, peer reviewed, and even I can scroll down to the publication date, past 12 months. And then if I can get this thing out of the way here, I can search. Okay, so that's how you do your searching. Then the latter part of this of our little workshop here, I'm going to show you what happens when you select one of the articles to read, and that's going to help you find that citation to put into your reference. So, but notice here that now I have 613, but I can go even further and apply, go back to my advanced search, because Parkinson's is kind of broad, right? But if I select that, I can add other search terms like gum, like chewing gum. Let's see if anything comes up. Now I only have 2 articles, so I can read those 2. And because I selected full text, I can open the article right here, PDF or online, and there's my article. So just so you know, applying those filters, now you know how to do that, and you can do that in any other database. Are there questions over what I covered so far? Because I'm going to jump into just a really quick thought on reading. Any? No? No, we're all quiet. Okay. So that's just the basics of filtering in advanced. Always use the advanced search and start your searching on cui.edu/library. When you're reading content, and you do want to read, set aside time to read, preview the content. So before you just blast into an article, make sure that you preview maybe the abstract. You look at the subjects that are being covered in the subject hyperlinks, right? But then just glance at it, because most of the professional research has a conclusion that you can even start with, making sure that is it is it coming up with the results that you thought it would. So you don't waste a lot of time reading the whole article and then discovering, oh, it's not what I needed. Stop to take notes at intervals. This is another really effective way to make sure that what you are reading sticks, and pop quiz yourself if you really want to know how, if the content is going to stick. Hint, EBSCO has an app that you can download on your phone. And if you have created an EBSCO account, which you can do that anytime, just remember your password. Then when you bookmark articles, that EBSCO app, they will be on your phone, and the app will have them, it has a text to audio feature. So those articles can be read to you when you're out and about. It's another way to, quickly digest more information. And that's a really hot tip. So, oh, by the way, if you're interested, there is going to be I'm going to have a really quick how to read or speed read research articles workshop coming up. So that will be on the events icon on the library's cui.edu/library website. And you can register for that. All of the workshops are free. So just to review, where do you start to do your research? Anybody?
Library.
Yes.
UI library.
Thank you. cui.edu/library. Bookmark that page. And when you are researching at the advanced level, you are really doing what? Applying.
Filters.
Applying filters. Yes. It's not like asking Google or ChatGPT. You're adding layers. By the way, the applying filters helps you to discover other things that you may not have thought of when you're doing your research. That's part of the research process. So let it happen. And finally, you will have to actually read the articles. Okay. Thank you. That's awesome. Onwards and upwards. Julie, I'm going to stop sharing so you can.
Awesome.
Yeah, stop share so you can take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Regina.
Yeah,
That was really helpful to get just a quick
just the
preview of,
basic.
yeah, how you're using research and gathering that research for your writing projects. Um, let me just, I'm trying to find there we go. Okay. So before we go into continuing to integrate research into your writing, I just wanted to drop a couple of things in the chat. I added my email address and 2 links. Hopefully the bit.ly link works. I set that up yesterday. So my role is the director of the online writing lab, and the online writing lab is for graduates and nursing students and faculty and staff. However, if you are an undergraduate student, I want to just point you to this site, which shows we have undergraduate students, they use the writing studio, and then for graduate and nursing students and others, they use the online writing lab. So, and I wanted to point you to this site because we just recently gathered some of our resources together. And I wanted to show you what that looks like. So we have a lot of resources here. There's information here about how to use writing services. But you can see, for example, there's a lot of information on format and citation. So there are sample papers, MLA, APA, Chicago style. You can see there are a few different handouts here. One is on common references in APA, citing websites, and then there are several videos. So these are things that I've created on APA. So it's a lot of information in that. There's a lot of resources in this website, and I just encourage you to browse around so that you can take a look in case these are asynchronous things that you can learn about, teach yourself about without having an actual appointment. However, we would also love to have you come to the OWL. And the main thing that we do is provide that direct feedback on student work. And we have either, let me just go back here. We provide either written feedback, which is where you would upload a paper and then within 48 hours of your appointment date, you would get some feedback. But that would just be written comments. You can also set up virtual consultations, live consultations. Usually we use Zoom or Google Meets, and then you can speak with one of the consultants. I'm on that schedule. But then there are 7 other OWL consultants who are really terrific support for students. So just want to give you a little bit of an OWL commercial. And please feel free always to reach out to us individually if you can't find the information that you're looking for. So now I'm just going to continue by talking. So Regina had several GIFs. Are they GIFs or GIFs? I can never figure that out. No one knows. Bugs Bunny. Now I've got a couple of gifs of cats because why not? Cats are great. Um, so here's a cat typing. So when we're integrating research, you have to keep a couple of things in mind. So Regina's pointed you how to find scholarly peer-reviewed research that's really going to support your work and give you credibility as a scholar. And so then how do we make sure that that's clearly introduced into our papers? So the first thing we do is we have an in-text citation where in the text indicating that research has been added. And I'm sure you're familiar with this. I remember doing this in high school and in college. And so it's pretty common that you would have the in-text citation. I've got the APA kind of woven into this presentation because most of the graduate schools use APA format. And then there's also a full reference on the reference page. So with an in-text citation, you would only include the author and the year, but then write everything out at the end of the document. And so there has to be this one-to-one correspondence. You can't include something on your reference page according to APA. You can't include something on your reference page that you read but didn't cite. And you can't leave out anything from your reference page that you cited. Hopefully I got that right. So that's that one-to-one correspondence. And usually, I've taught undergraduate writing and worked with and graduate writing in different ways. And often at the undergraduate level, students are incorporating quotations and maybe learning some of the basics of paraphrasing. But typically at the graduate level, the emphasis is more on paraphrasing rather than quoting. And that's because as an advanced student, you are working on really having a conversation with the researchers who have come before you. And you are reading their information and internalizing it to the point where then you can, flexibly write about it in various ways. So either way, however, if you have a quotation or a paraphrase, you would of course include the correct citation. So I just want to encourage you, if you haven't done a lot of paraphrasing in the past, to really be open to that as you're stepping into graduate school, because it's something that I think will strengthen your writing. And I've got some ideas of how to do that. So of course, when we paraphrase, we're looking at maybe a few sentences in a document. You found the great article that Regina helped you discover, and then you read the abstract, you're like, yeah, this looks good. Then you start reading, like she was saying. So you kind of take that reading process apart. And then you figure out, okay, there's this section in the findings that I really want to paraphrase and bring into this paper. So of course you have to fully understand what you're reading about in order to paraphrase it. So that's the first step. And then think about what are the key terms in the sentence or sentences, and then reflect on how the research fits into your paper. So this is a point that sometimes students miss. So we're thinking about paraphrasing. How are we going to pull this information into a paragraph? Well, you can't just kind of be typing along, you're writing, here's a topic sentence, and then bam, like here's this quotation or paraphrase. You have to kind of lead the reader into it. So as you reflect on how that fits into your argument or into your paragraph, that will help you to kind of ease that path. And on a practical level, when you're paraphrasing, I usually try to avoid looking at the original entirely, and just kind of restate it in my mind. Another thing I do is trying to flip the grammar of the sentence around. So whatever came at the end, put at the beginning and so forth. And then I do think it's much easier to paraphrase longer sections instead of single sentences. So you might keep that in mind too. So the top tip here that I would suggest, sometimes students are like, well, I don't know at what point I should use quotation marks around, words and what point it's paraphrased. And sometimes it's just there's a term and you're not going to put quotations around a term like differentiated learning. You're not quoting that. That's just what it is. So usually I aim for no more than 3 is maybe a little too few, but like 4 to 5, if I get past 4 or 5 words in a row, then the similarity score might look too much like the original. So if you kind of keep that in mind that, I find that students sometimes get really nervous about plagiarism. They don't want to be accused of that. So then they, are kind of tight about how few words how many words they'll put in quotation marks. So as long as it's, there aren't too many words in a row, then you'll probably be fine. But this is important. There are 2 things that we in the writing center world name. One is a dropped quote. So you should avoid this. A dropped quote happens when, say you writing a paragraph, you wrote two sentences to begin that paragraph, and then you want to include the research. Well, that's great because you should begin a paragraph with kind of a main idea and then ease into that to the specifics of the research. But it is jarring to the reader if you just start a sentence with a quote. So try to avoid that. That's what I'd call a dropped quote. There's no lead up. Even saying something as simple as according to so and so, then you put the quote, okay? But even better is to do more paraphrasing or like integrating seamlessly the research into your work. And then the second thing to avoid is called patch writing. And this is, if you think about it, like think about a sentence, you're trying to paraphrase, and you take out maybe 2 words, put in synonyms. Well, that's still very close to the original. So that might be considered plagiarism just because it's too similar. So we want to be careful of that as well. So let's look at a demo. So this is the beginning of what could be a paragraph, and I want to just show you some options here. So what I did was wrote a sentence, an opening sentence, and then incorporated a quotation into one of the sentences, and then in the second example, it's the same information, but I created a paraphrase. So this says, by incorporating SEL strategies, teachers can help their students become more engaged in lessons successfully. In fact, Smith 2025 states that, quote, student engagement can significantly improve when teachers employ quick check-ins and help students break tasks down into small portions. And then you can see some APA formatting here going on. I included the author's name and the year directly after it in parentheses. And since it is a quotation, I put the page number at the end of it as well. So what I've done here is you can see the key terms in my main idea. My main idea is about how teachers can utilize SEL strategies, social emotional learning strategies, in order to help their students be engaged, which then leads to better academic achievement. Okay, so you can see that I kind of targeted those key words that were also in the quotation, and I incorporated that into my opening sentence. This is an example of how I might paraphrase that. So for the first sentence is the same. By incorporating SEL strategies, teachers can help their students become more engaged in lessons successfully. And then, in fact, Smith 2025 notes that engagement increases when teachers add quick check-ins and scaffold tasks. So here instead of, let me go back to the quote. So the original quote said, student engagement can significantly improve. And then what I changed it to was Smith notes that engagement increases. So used a different verb there. And then when teachers, the quote says, when teachers employ quick check-ins and help students break tasks down. So then I still use the word quick check-ins, and then I rephrased breaking a task down and I called it scaffolding. So you can see that the sentence is similar, the ideas are similar, but the wording is fairly different. And with this paraphrase, I don't need to add that page number. So the good thing about paraphrasing, like in this situation, is oftentimes with research papers, I'm not just looking at one article, right? I'm most often in more advanced work looking at several. And so then I could go on and say, and compared to Smith, this other researcher found that this strategy was most effective in their study. So it's just a way to, paraphrasing is a great way for you to be flexible as the writer and really own and kind of control the language in a way so that you're telling the story and making the argument. So this was another example. I want to keep an eye on our time. So I'll just go through this quickly. So the original here is about, this is another quotation that showed that there was a study that was done where students who were learning a second language, if their writing was being assessed, then if they knew there was a rubric being used, they had less anxiety than if they didn't know what was to be expected in the writing assessment. So you can see I highlighted here writing assessment rubrics. I highlighted low anxiety and no rubrics and high anxiety. So those were the key terms I really wanted to make sure came out in my paraphrasing. And so this was the first example. The findings from the study indicated that when second language students knew a rubric was to be used to assess their writing, their anxiety decreased. On the other hand, anxiety increased for second language students whose professors did not use a rubric. So you could see that I wanted to use this, I wanted to make sure I captured the key terms, but that I used different words. And then this is a way to flip the sentence around. So for second language students, the use of a rubric to assess their writing was associated with decreased anxiety, whereas students whose writing was assessed without a rubric experienced increased. I could probably make that more concise, but you get the idea. So what is at the beginning of the sentence, you could put at the end, and etc. So I just wanted to pause here for a second. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, what is preventing you or making you avoid paraphrasing most of the time? Why are there reasons you might not want to do that or be hesitant to do that?
Um, I think when you're needing to quote directly, like a
Mhm.
specific study or something that's very, very specific, and you have to quote it, and you can't paraphrase it. So it would be like it's just something you can't. A specific report had this specific outcome.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Right?
sometimes we do want to capture special language, or maybe like you're saying, it's a very specific finding that, has to be presented in that way. Um, any other reasons why you might, thank you, Joan. Any other reasons why you might be a little nervous about it or why you wouldn't use paraphrasing.
I think you mentioned earlier about us being nervous of it coming across as plagiarism. However, with you showing us how to cite it, I think that will relieve a lot of pressure.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I find that students are very conscientious and usually do not want to be found, do not want to be accused of plagiarism. That's dishonesty, and we have to uphold our integrity as students and as, in academics. So that's what I found, is that sometimes students are just nervous because they don't know good strategies, and they don't want to make their text sound too different from the original. But I just want to encourage you to go ahead and give it a shot. And you're always welcome to come and run it by us in the OWL. Elijah also wrote, oh, you're right. Regina wrote, takes longer time to think about paraphrasing. You're exactly right. It's harder. And yeah, and Elijah kind of echoed what Anita said, potential of not citing sources correctly and being accused of plagiarism. Yeah, those are real concerns. And so it's good to have some tools in your tool belt so you know that you have done a good job with that. Okay. Regina, would you like to talk a little bit about, we're going to move on to citing and referencing now. I think you're muted.
Unmute. There we go.
There
Trying
you
to
go.
click the button. Yes. So talking about citations, using the professional databases, finding those articles, the professional databases have citation tools embedded in them. So if you can go to if I go back to EBSCO, right, or any one of those articles, when you open that article and you use the toolbar at the top, Julie, if you want to click yeah, there we go. So these are the toolbars that are going to appear at the top of the articles when you're using a professional database. And you will notice I've kind of highlighted them here. There's a little in that EBSCO toolbar at the top. I know them by heart. There's a quotation. And if you click that will show you here's the citation already formatted in whatever format you need, APA, MLA, or whatever. There's those options. And then the second one is JSTOR. And then they have a citation generator there. The third one is just called Cite, and I think it's not from ProQuest, it's from one of the other databases. And the last one is actually Google Scholar. Google Scholar is something that you can use as well if you can't find any information on the Concordia resources. But those citation generators are embedded within the platform, so you don't have to, go out to a different site and try to figure them out on your own. So when, again, using the professional databases, use those citation generators, but oh, yeah, go ahead. Next, and there they are. This is an EBSCO article. There at the top, that's that toolbar. And that's what you're going to look for at the top of the articles when you're looking at them in a professional database. And then, but Julie's and both of us would like to warn you that you need to double check those citations. So, once you have them and, they're in your Works Cited page, you do need to double check to make sure that they are formatted correctly, because it is possible that the professional formatting citation tools have made an error. So that's just a warning. But they're there and they're easy to use, and it's easier, I think, to check them when you're done writing your paper than it is to, in the moment, figure out how do I create a citation from scratch.
Thanks, Regina. Yeah, what I do when I'm doing research is I'll find this source, right? I'll look for the cite button or the quotation marks, and then I'll paste that into my document. I don't care if it's not perfectly set up at that point, I just have it. So that's handy. And then So for example, I showed the original here that was provided by the citation generator, and you can see it was actually in pretty good shape. But they're missing commas and periods in terms of APA formatting with relation to the author names. The year was placed at the last line of the reference when it should have been right after the authors. The title was fine. It's in sentence case. And then the perspective on psychiatric care was not fully written out, but I wrote that out in the journal uh, name spot in the reference, and then added the numbers here, the volume and issue number and page range, as well as the DOI address. A DOI address, the DOI is a digital object identifier, and there's this numeral that comes after that every I don't know,
Professional article.
peer-reviewed
Yep.
article gets. And if you click on this, it'll take you to a permanent link where you can then always see the publication information. You may not be able to see the whole article, but Regina's note here is that that should be hyperlinked.
Right.
And so that way your professor or whoever's looking at your paper, they can just click through and see that article. So that's a little tidbit about APA format. And I'm just going to go on and talk a little bit about how some in-text citations look in APA. So when you have the author and date system, for one author, you would put the last name and the year. For two authors, you'd put both last names and the year. And then if you have three or more authors, you use the last name of the first author and then the Latin abbreviation et al. So there are examples here that just write out Rodriguez 2023, Rodriguez and Garcia 2023, and then Rodriguez et al. So that's kind of the basic look of how they should be in APA. And just as a note, you never have to use initials or first names in in-text citations in APA, only last names, and that the periods always go outside the parentheses. And there's different types of APA citations. There's narrative, where like in your sentence, you're naming the author, in this case, Kaler 2016 noted that the dangers. So you're naming that author, and in that case, you put the year directly after the author's name. And then if you instead do a parenthetical citation, like the second example, you just talk about the content in your sentence and add that parenthetical citation at the end. So Kaler, 2016 is in parentheses at the end. And then when you're including, remember we talked about that one-to-one correspondence between citations and references. We're always looking for 4 elements on the references. The who is the author who's responsible for the work, the when it was published, what is the work called, and then where can I retrieve this work? So the who, when, what, where, that's the order. And I have some examples here to show you. This is a journal article. And so we've got our authors here first, 5 different authors. And you use the first and middle initials to separate them, then the year, then the article title, the journal name in italics and title case, volume number, issue number, page range, and DOI. And then there are a few other examples that are shown here. Usually with authored books, that might be like your textbook you might have to include. This is an example, the Barbara Bassett's Reflective Practice Guide. That is a textbook in the Capstone Project in the MAED. So that's pretty simple. You just include the author the year, the title of the book, and the publisher. And then I also like to include this because if you're citing from the CDC, for example, or the WHO or the California Department of Education, you name the group author or the organizational author. So that's your author that you'd put in the first place of the reference, and then move on with the year, name of the web page, and where you could find it. So I won't go through all this detail, but we're happy to share these slides with you. And there are lots of different resources, like I showed on that resources page that we have in the Writing Studio and OWL pages. So I'm going to pause there, stop sharing for a second. Any questions at this point?
I have questions.
Please.
Okay. I noticed you mentioned to say if there were 3 or more authors to do et al.
Mhm.
But then just now there were names with initials with,
Yes.
is that because one's a citation and one's showing the references?
You got it, Anita. Yes.
Oh.
So in your citations, remember that's kind of like a shortcut within your text. So you don't put much extraneous information. Yeah, so it's the last name of the first author et al. And then the year, whereas in the reference, then you would give all that information. And you're required to list up to 21 authors according to APA.
Wow.
I have another question. When you were paraphrasing, it said phrase the first one. You put like the author, the 2 authors and the year, but then you continued writing, but you didn't put the name again. So when you said, on the other hand, anxiety increased for second language students whose professors did not use a rubric. Even though that's from the same article, we don't have to cite it a second time.
You've hit upon a very important thing, and that's that, yeah, that would be considered over-citation. So in APA, if you cite at the beginning, at first mention, wherever you're first putting in your research. Then, as long as it's clear to the reader you haven't changed sources, you do not have to recite within that paragraph. So it's a good question, comes up frequently because also I was taught in high school and college that if I'm going to cite, like if I'm going to talk about something in a paragraph, I just talk about it and then at the very end I'll put the citation. But that's not the case with APA. With APA, you cite at first mention, and then when you move to another paragraph, you might need to recite or would go on to a different source.
And if the person we're citing, let's say, is named Smith, and there's another source by a different Smith, how do we differentiate?
Great question. Is if they have different years of publication, you're off the hook, right? It's not so hard because you'll see that there are 2 different sources, one in one year and one in another year. However, if there are 2 different sources by the same author within a single year, usually you add a lower, like a lowercase a and a b to differentiate. But that's usually when you're getting into writing a dissertation or something like that, and you have tons and tons of sources. And but those are great questions, Anita. You're noticing all the details.
Thank you. And then I think this is my last question for you right now is the 48 turnaround for the OWL feedback, not counting Sunday. I'm wondering because I went to the orientation and they mentioned, we get our assignments are due on a Sunday. So does that mean we need to submit it to you by, I don't understand how to get it turned into OWL and then get the feedback and in time for me to write it? Like what day of the week? I'm not sure.
I get it. So what I would suggest is making sure you're turning it in by Thursday because our consultants will work on Saturday. So they should return it to you by Saturday at midnight, and then you'd have the time on Sunday to finish it up.
So they said the discussion boards are due on Thursday. So will I have time? I mean, I have no clue about, I'll understand once I am in it, but for now it's an abstract concept.
Yeah, no, I get it. If you want to have your discussion boards reviewed, you can. I mean, they're usually fairly reflective and kind of informal. But if it's a reflection board assignment, so you just backtrack again. So go back to maybe finishing it by Monday, then you could get it by Wednesday and have time to finish it by Thursday.
But are we receiving our assignment on Monday?
Well, that'll depend on usually. You'll see how it goes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I can ask a quick one about the graduate support APA videos. I am trying to find those. Can you direct me again where those would be?
Absolutely. Let me find that link again.
It's buried on there. Yeah.
It is a little buried. So you go to this link
I don't see it. Are you sharing?
and then scroll
Okay.
down a little to where it says resources, and then you can click in there.
Okay, I'm seeing resources. I see support for resources for writing consultants, workshops, past workshops.
Let me show you what I mean.
I'm sorry, thank you.
You're totally fine. I'm really glad you're asking. So here's the link I gave you. And then you scroll down. I didn't mention Grammarly, by the way. You can download a version of Grammarly as a proofreading tool with your Eagles email. This is where I'm looking, Allison, is resources for writers. Click on that. And that we're still like this just got launched maybe 3 or 4 days ago. So we're still kind of ironing everything out, but that's the place where you could then get to this site, which is kind of our hub for all of our current resources. Okay. We would love it if, we're happy to answer any other questions. I just wanted to drop something in the chat.
Could I ask something real quick?
Absolutely.
As you were, as both of you were going through things, I had way more experience back in my college days with MLA. That was a pretty hot ticket item to use for research. So what I don't remember though is on the last page of the paper where you're going to put all of your references.
Mhm.
Is that called works cited or
Yeah, you're
references?
remembering that right, Sarah. So MLA is used it's the Modern Languages
Mm-hmm,
Association style guide. That's used in the humanities.
mm-hmm,
Chicago style, in terms of the schools that Concordia offers, is theology. So the theology students would use Chicago. And all the sciences, education, psychology, business, all of them use APA.
mm-hmm.
So you're remembering MLA correctly. The works site, that's called the works cited. In APA, that's called the references or the reference.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then the other quick question I had is, um, I personally, I love the idea of paraphrasing. I understand completely what you're saying. When you are citing within your paper, you're going to put your period, you said outside of the parentheses, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of my sentence, or where that, or the citation goes at the end of the first sentence that you're talking about the author?
Yeah, so that would be considered a parenthetical citation where you would
Okay.
have all the information in your sentence, and then in parentheses at the end of your sentence, you include the author and the date. And then after that last parenthesis is where you would put the period.
Okay. And you said say that word again.
Parenthetical.
Okay. Within parentheses, correct?
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
need to know that, but
Yeah.
it's distinguished from narrative, which means
Okay.
that within your sentence, you're actually naming the source. So,
Okay. In that respect, the sentence would be the tree is green as Jones.
mhm.
And then would it be comma and then the year, or just Jones 1995 stated in his article?
Yeah, yes, exactly what you said. We would just put 1995 in parentheses.
Okay, so the year goes in parentheses.
It's kind
Okay.
of like with APA, you kind of interrupt the flow, which
Okay.
is different from other style guides.
Okay. All right. And then do you think it would be possible if you could I have a Zoom meeting with you and Regina together, and I could really probably better explain what my needs will really be?
Absolutely. Well,
Of course.
let's email about that
Okay.
after our meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
And we are over time, but we've tried several times to put a link to an exit survey that we're asking you to take. And for some reason, it's prompting you to log in. So if you're not logged in at your CUI